For everyone joining live, thanks for tuning in. If you are not joining live, then this is an IELTS writing section tip video for Visto. If you haven't already joined the community at www.visto.ai, highly recommend it. It's totally free to join. And today what I'm going to be doing is going over some general IELTS tips for the writing section. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to actually go through one of our users' writing prompt responses and do a bit of a write-up, or not a write-up. I'm going to go through it basically line by line and give my feedback. I did write it about a year and a half ago. I wrote the IELTS. I only got an 8.5 on the writing. I was very disappointed. I was able to get 9s in the other sections, but only 8.5 because, I don't know, I guess my handwriting wasn't good enough. But anyways, I won't get into the details of that. So if you haven't already checked out my first IELTS video, I did a kind of like an overview of the IELTS as well as my general study tips. For this video, we're going to go into the writing section specifically. I'll take about 10 minutes to go through those, and then we're going to take up an answer as well. So, tips for the writing section. These are all from the free Visto IELTS guide. So if you haven't signed up or if you haven't got it yet, just let me know. Ping me after the fact on Facebook or by email. I'll just send it right to you so you have a record of it. But I'm gonna go through each one in the writing section in a little bit more detail. Answer any questions at the end. Of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the Facebook chat, and I'll get to the questions and taking up one of the writing answers at the end as well. So, tips for the writing section. The first and arguably most important is I talk about this in the general IELTS video, is knowing how to divide up your time, right? So you have 20 minutes to write a 150 word letter and 40 minutes to write a 250 word essay, as they call it. If you're struggling to write enough, try to get as close to the limit as possible. So what you really want to do is keep that in mind, right? Because it's a timed session. You have 60 minutes. They don't tell you when to stop working on the first question on the letter and start working on the essay, right? So it's simple math to figure out that 150 plus 250 is 400 words. Divide that, so you can divide 150 by 400 and 250 by 400 to figure out what percentage of the hour you should be spending on each one. It comes out to about 20 and 40 minutes each, right? So if you start on the shorter answer, the 150 word one, write for 20 minutes as much as you can. Hopefully you will have hit the 150 words and then move on, right? Move on to the longer one because you only have 40 minutes to complete that. Worst case or best case is if you finish the second one before the 60 minutes are up, you can always go back to the first. But the thing to keep in mind is that the longer question, the 250 word essay, is obviously worth more points, right? So you actually might be better off starting with that one first, spending a max of 40 minutes on it, then going to the shorter one and spending 20 minutes on that, right? You got to think about how to maximize your points. So you definitely don't want to cut yourself short on the 250 word essay. That's all about timing and practice. Next tip, use clean writing and formatting. Make sure the writing is neat. Leave a blank line in between. Okay, so let me go piece by piece for this. Use clean writing and formatting. So basically what I mean by this is write that so it's legible and make it clear formatting. So paragraphs, very clear paragraphs, 3 to 4 lines, 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph, and then divide it up by paragraph. So it's very clear. The reader can kind of see the story you're taking them through. Make sure the writing is neat. Leave a blank line in between each paragraph and keep everything within the margins. So you don't want to be writing till the very edge of the page. It's just going to smudge your writing and it won't look as neat. Obviously, you want to write as clearly as possible. If you're writing really fast to fit in more words, but the reader can't read what you're writing, then you're going to lose marks there because what you're writing isn't legible, right? Leave a blank line in between. So that's what I did. Leave a line in between paragraphs so it's very obvious that it's a second paragraph. Also, when they're just looking at it visually, it kind of looks nicer, and so it comes across a little bit cleaner in that regard. Stick to the standard outline of intro, body, conclusion in your intro. Okay, so, generally for anything, right? This is any movie you've ever seen, any book, intro, body, conclusion, right? And it's the same thing for these. So an introductory sentence or paragraph, the body, which is going to answer the majority of the questions that are asked, and the conclusion. So you're kind of wrapping up what you said in the body within usually about 2 to 3 sentences. In your intro, make sure to start with "Dear Sir, Madam." So that will kind of depend on what the prompt is, but in most questions, it's asking you to like write a letter to a certain person, and so they expect the "Dear Sir" or "Madam" if it's addressed to someone, or if they give you a blatant name, Adam, Stephanie, whatever it is, then address them directly at the top. "Hello," whatever. It kind of depends by question, but you get what I mean there. Next tip, your intro should be a small paragraph, then go into more details to answer the questions in the body. So 2 or 4 paragraphs depending on the question, then finish with a conclusion paragraph and signature if applicable. So again, all of this is depending on what the question type is. We'll assume it's just a letter for now. Small paragraph for the intro, so quick introduction basically. And then what you're going to do in the body, so usually between 2 and 4 paragraphs, it depends how much they're asking and whether you're writing the letter or the essay, kind of how many paragraphs you'll need, as well as how many things they ask in the prompt, right? If they ask you to cover kind of 3 details, it might be good to have 3 body paragraphs with each one coinciding with them to make it very clear. Then again, finish with a conclusion, so you want to wrap it up, almost like a really quick summary with a sign-off. Once you've read the assignment, do some quick brainstorming to start forming your answer. Feel free to get creative, whatever works quickest for you. Use these ideas to form the majority of your answer. So I talk about this in the other video as well. What I don't recommend is that you read the question and then just start writing immediately, right? Because that can easily lead to kind of confusion, and then you forget what you're going to write, and then you're not organized, and your paragraphs aren't organized well. What I recommend doing is read it, take a second to think about what your answer is going to be, maybe think about what your 2, 3, 4 points are going to be, and then you can even jot that down in point form. So now you know, okay, intro, paragraph 1 is going to be about this, paragraph 2 is going to be about this, paragraph 3 is going to be about this, and then conclusion, right? You can kind of visualize it, and then you know how many words you need for each paragraph and how much time to dedicate to each one. The more you can kind of have it mapped out in your head before writing, the more organized it's going to be, the more organized it's going to look, and the better your answer is going to flow and kind of make sense in English. Once you're done your answer, read it over to check for spelling and grammar mistakes, fix them quickly. Again, so when I talk about kind of dividing up the time, bake in at least 1 or 2 minutes to edit, right? So you write each one. If you're writing IELTS on paper, then you're writing with a pencil with an eraser. So write it out. Again, if you take the time to think about your answer ahead of time, then hopefully the structure will be pretty good. But what you might do is you might misspell a word, you might miss something or something like that. So you want to give yourself, at least a second, a minute to kind of go back through it. Next point. Practice makes perfect, especially in writing. Practice with a timer, and don't forget to review, edit your answers. Yeah, so, I learned this the hard way too, right? Because I like to think I have pretty good English, but I don't handwrite very often. So the more you do anything, right, the better you're going to get at it. So just make sure that if you're struggling in the writing section, just start doing it more, right? Try to write out an answer prompt every single day. And get some feedback on it, maybe even send it to some of your English-speaking friends or something like that to get feedback wherever you can. Or tune in on these live sessions, and if you send me your answer ahead of time, you'll get it looked at for free, as we will find out at the end of this session. Lastly, make sure to read the instructions carefully and cover every question topic mentioned. This is super important. It's going to sound very simple, but the easiest mistake you can do is either not read the question correctly and just answer it wrong, or number 2 is you don't hit every bullet point in the question, right? So usually it's like a general question with like 3 or 4 bullet points that they ask you to talk about. If you miss one of those bullet points, it's a very easy way to lose points, to lose marks overall. So again, that's why it's so important to kind of map it out at the beginning. Once you've read the question, taken a minute to kind of organize your answer and make sure that you are touching on every point that they ask in the question. All right, so those are kind of my general tips for the writing section. Hopefully you found them helpful. And the other thing I'll recommend is the first few that you should do it without the timer, right? So do it a few times to get the flow. You're going to see after you do a few practice questions, there's like a general theme. A lot of them are kind of the same. The outline is kind of the same, and you'll get more comfortable with it. Then start doing the timer. You won't feel as nervous. You won't be as rushed. So that's what I suggest in order to get started with the writing section. Hopefully you found these tips pretty helpful. If you are watching live, feel free to shoot any questions in the chat and I will be happy to answer them. And the other thing we're going to do now is we're going to move to a live review of one of our users' questions. So again, if you're watching this after the fact and you haven't joined, make sure to sign up at visto.ai. I put out content like this live 3 times a week. We go over IELTS, finding jobs in Canada, different PNPs and stuff like that. So visto.ai. Thank you for tuning in, and I'm going to turn it over to the live chat now.